Yo, my peoples, what's up? Welcome to Shelf Stories, the channel that tells tales from games, books, and life. I am your host, Jay Snakey. So it's part of stopping by for this latest reflection on content creation, part 5, people. As I record this mid-2023, I have made a whole series of videos. Thank you so much to anyone who has come with me on the journey so far. In those previous 4 videos, I reflected in detail as much as I could about different aspects of this whole board gaming content creator thing. So, payment and review copies, relationships, trust, a relationship with the audience, with the publishers, trying to help people understand, open the door, so to speak, on what we do, why we do it, etc. This video is about solutions. We'll wrap up a series, gonna give the ball forward, and where do we go from here? And I would love to hear people's feedback, especially on this one. This won't be one of my bigger pieces. It'll be a fair bit shorter. There won't be as many graphics or anything like that. This is a conversation. I don't pretend to have the answers. I have a couple of suggestions and insights, but I'd love to hear what everybody thought. If you are an industry veteran, have thought about this a lot. If you're on the consumer end and you want to share what you want to see, what would help you build trust in what we're doing as content creators, let's open a conversation. So for one last video, I'm going to fire it up, give some thoughts, and invite everybody to participate. This is Shelf Stories, my channel where I engage in above-the-table content like this whole reviewer series. Go ahead and give a subscription if you haven't already. Like the videos that you enjoy and tell people about what I'm doing here. I will not monetize this space. I want to keep this area clear of advertising so that the ideas can flow and the conversation is open without ads jutting in there. So anything that you can do on that social level to spread the word, I greatly appreciate it. In my last video, I discussed the enthusiast reviewer, how we are gamers, and we go from enjoying games to spreading joy about games, which leads us to firing up the podcast mics and the videos, etc. And we do so out of a sense of joy, not just kind of a flippant hobby thing for many of us, that it comes from a deep-seated human wiring that leads to the desire to affiliate and share joyful things. 4th video, all about joy. This video, let's get into the real life of it. Content creation is pretty expensive. There is so much that goes into it, and I'll take it into different pieces. First, there's the tech side. You got the microphone. This cost me about $100 some odd bucks. This Yeti, it's pretty good. There's much higher quality mics that you can get, obviously, for more. Lights, the basic setup will cost you $100, and you're gonna go up from there. Camera stand and the camera itself. I'm talking to you from a 480p webcam, and that's not great. And I know that I am nerfing my potential views by not being able to upgrade and get a high resolution cam. But I'm a social worker. I got 2 kids and I live in expensive, tax heavy Connecticut. And so there's certain investments that I just haven't been able to make as a person who wants to grow an audience and all that kind of thing. So that's the check side. Games themselves, you're looking at many of them are review copies. I've been very open about that. Had I paid out of pocket, we're talking thousands of dollars. And this is, there's this one shelf and then there's the stuff over there. And they're necessary to create content. I mean, there's only so far you can go with not talking about games. That's always like a thought experiment, right? So, okay, we're going to fire up a podcast, and the podcast motif is we're not going to talk, we're going to talk about life and this and that, their thing. People want games. Let's stay inside the box for at least many people feel that way. So for many reasons. So on a video level, having the wall of games, which is a trope at this point, that actually communicates something to the watcher. So can't take for granted that everybody here is a regular watcher. Maybe there's people that are new coming in or unfamiliar. Having the wall of games communicates expertise. It is a way of signaling that I'm a trustworthy person. I know what I'm talking about without having to kind of verbally go through the whole thing. So it's actually kind of important to have this whole setup from a outreach perspective. And the content itself. The YouTube algorithm gods are hungry for regular content. You don't put out stuff on a consistent basis. then you fall in the rankings, you fall in the algorithms, you don't have that exposure. So in order to create the regular content, the games have to be new and they have to be coming in. Don't think I have to tell people that, that the newer the game, the hotter the game, the better. If we wait for the secondhand stuff, or if we wait for trades and everything, I mean, that's good to kind of round out the scenario, and some people make that work. But for the most part, especially if you're new and breaking in, you're in for some cost, getting new games, getting mini games, etc. And then there's time. Time is money. The time that it takes to put videos together, edit podcasts, takes hours. Each one takes a long time, and not all of us have the time or the capacity to do it. Maybe we're working at more hours than the standard 40 in order to make ends meet and everything. And with conventions, I mean, very few people that I know have the spare time and money in order to make it to conventions, even one. Maybe they'll pick one, but on a consistent basis, I still haven't been to Gen Con. I'm going to make a goal of going one day, but the cost is the biggest barrier for me. And also the time to take it away from my young children. So all that plays in to the success of a content creator. We don't talk about it, but this is the space. We need to really consider this stuff. So where does the money come from? The money comes from publishers. And that's people like, oh my God. And I've seen that comment so over and over and over again. Okay, if you're going to be a reviewer, it's fine to get money. We understand, but don't get it from the publisher. Maintain the independence and find some other way. And what other ways? Really, I mean, you look at YouTube. YouTube is famous for giving dribbles based on your view count. And, you see the board gaming. Board gaming is not huge counts. Relative to some other hobbies, like, help with video games. Whoa, hundreds of thousands of views, in a board gaming, like 8. I think my most successful video on the One Stop Co-op Shop got 13. And that is not going to pay for anything significant over the long term. And then there's a Patreon and other forms of direct support from the audience. You'll hear that sometimes too. It's like, well, don't take money from publishers. Get it from the audience itself. Hustle for your Patreon. Very few of us, with very limited exceptions, can support themselves either on Patreon or majority on support. For the most part, people don't pay for content, whether it is tutorials or reviews or any of that stuff. It takes 1,000 views to even see a cent or a couple cents, and it multiplies from there. It's not nearly enough. And there's other complicating factors of this. First of all, we want the hobby to be more diverse. Shelf Stories does not make any accident of the fact that I want this to see more people from marginalized backgrounds, always advocating for that. And there's a growing chorus of us who also want that. We don't got the money. We don't got the generational wealth to break into the content creation space. Just detailed all the stuff that has to go into it with time and money. Very few of us have it. White male heads of household, look at the demographics, are way more likely to be able to afford content creation, getting into publishing, etc. So if we just rely on what's happening now and not get additional support from the publisher or wherever else, then we're going to keep getting what we're getting, which is a very predominantly white hobby. There are a few of us, but not as many as there could be. It remains a fact that the entity with the means to support and the incentive to do so is the publishers. You'll hear the response: still don't take money from publishers if you plan on doing reviews. Opinion, no pay. No opinion, pay. Previews, watch and plays, all that kind of stuff. Do that if you want to get paid. That sounds easy and great, but here is the problem. And I went over this in the previous videos, which is why I did that whole series. Most of us rely on those trust relationships that are built by sharing our thoughts and opinions, sharing our authentic selves in order to get any kind of following. And the publishers won't open up the purse strings unless we get a following, right? So they want us to have the couple hundred, 1,000, or the niche audience. They want us to bring something to the table, and usually, but the way which we build that something is reviews. very few people, with exceptions, but the overall majority of us who get started doing reviews. It's just the easiest way, the most sure way to create the connections necessary. So then you begin with one paradigm for the most part. Then we get to the point where we can have that publisher infusion of support so that we can upgrade the tech and do the things we need to keep growing. And then you have this other part that says, okay, what you did, don't do that anymore. Do this other thing in order to keep growing. I see where it's coming from, but I just don't feel like people know what they're asking for when it comes to that clean separation. Don't take money from publishers. It just puts the content creation community in a place where you gotta have standing money in order to be able to do this. And if we keep doing that, if we keep doing what we're doing, we're gonna keep getting what we're getting. It's not bad, but it's not open to different voices. And I'm not just talking about the marginalized stuff. I mean, I'd love to hear from, folks lower down on the income scale talking about their favorite games too, no matter what you look like. So there's all sorts of diversity. That's not just kind of the ethnic and the gender stuff. And so I say all that, kind of playing the cry of poverty for many creators. I'm not saying that to say that we have some kind of sacred right to support. Sometimes the statement will come out and it'll come off that way. Well, creators should be paid for their work, as if that's kind of a truism. And yes, they should. But it's not as easy as like, okay, that's the mic drop and then move on. So the title of this section is The Sacred Trust Between Creators and Audiences. At the end of the day, because the numbers just don't work in terms of, creators staying independent and being able to afford what we do, I think the deal we make with our audience is, okay, this is the deal. This is the support we get from publishers. This is the relationship. That's the disclosures, right? And this is the reality of content creation. If you want more content creation in your life, you like what I do, well, then this is what has to happen in order for me to keep doing what we're doing. And it really does depend on the trust of the audience in order to move forward. And I think for the most part, like I linked in the last video, audiences get it, especially on the lower level where audiences find creators that are kind of low size or mid size. And it's almost like we're in this together, right? They call it in psychology disclosure paradox. So when people disclose their relationship, they disclose the income coming in, it in a weird way tunes down people's defense mechanisms because, like I say, okay, we're with each other. I get it. And at that low level, low view counts, new creators, I think people kind of get excited about that. And as long as we're open and disclosing, I think people are fine. And there's lines there. I think a line that people really want to keep, and I'll also put it that way. If you have a piece of content that is labeled review on its thumbnail or on the banner head or anything like that, then that piece of particular content should not have any publisher compensation attached to it besides a review copy. I think people want to at least keep that clear. So that specific whole thing of like no paid reviews, things that are clearly labeled review. Okay, I'm willing to kind of put that aside. And no one is defending that. And that's a frustration that so many of us feel that people feel like we're defending people's right to just like take a direct payment for a single piece of content. Nobody's defending that. What we want to articulate though is we want the ability to kind of in a general way have some opinion, have some content where we share opinions, and also be able to get some material support from usually publishers in order to keep going. So I think the best way forward that serves all interests, and this is not perfect, but this is the best that we can do, is trying to introduce little levels of friction and separation between the publisher who is lending material support and the creator's pieces. So like a sponsorship, you'll definitely have that where you'll have an outlet that will sponsor a channel. So like Bird Island Games, and that outfit supports OFPG, Our Family Plays Games, with the sponsorship. And that sponsorship is disclosed. They talk about it. And it's a relationship because they feel like they want to support this creator, this enthusiast, and what they do. There's a few more. I could, that's just the first one that came to mind. that creates a little bit of a separation. And as long as it's disclosed, people don't mind. Again, just let people in, let people consent to the idea. So as an idea that I've been kicking around, I wonder how possible it is for multiple publishers and manufacturers to get together, like GAMA, Game and Manufacturers Association, that's an actual entity, to be able to come together and the publishers kind of contribute to a common fund, and then creators can access those funds if they need to kind of get started and everything. So, that would be great for marginalized creators from marginalized backgrounds to be able to get started. The publisher is contributing, but they're not contributing to any person any particular way. It kind of like diffuses. There could be a bias like a general way, but it isn't like a one-to-one pay-to-play type thing. So if there are ways, that's just where I want to hear from people, to get monetary support from publishers, but avoid the one-to-one pay-to-play, which is the thing that people want to avoid the most, I think that's a good way to go, especially if from the small creator perspective. I'd love to hear what you think, especially if you disagree. I mean, I have tried to bring in the counter voice as much as possible throughout the series. I can definitely hear it. It's like, you know what? You're trying to make all these allowances, Jason. Good try, but it's too important to audience members to be able to trust what they see, that they a clear distinction between a review and an ad. And if it takes at hard separation all the way down, opinion, no pay, no opinion pay, then that's what it has to be. I guess I just want to get people to think about, if we truly enforce that hard line, then we're cutting out a lot of people from this content creation space, and we're privileging it for people who already have the means in order to be able to adhere to that hard separation. I don't think that's what we want. Certainly not what I want. And I invite people to think about whether that's what they want too. Everything I said in the previous section refers to the small creator. Is there a difference when it comes to the big creator? Does size matter? I think, yeah. And the argument is weak in the sense that I don't know the lines between small and big. But my instinct tells me, and just kind of what I know from human behavior tells me, that individual people and the small groups act differently than larger groups. And I would love to know if there's anybody that's done the marketing data and the research to kind of see where those tipping points are. If those tipping points can be identified. Anyway, at that bigger size, bigger influence, bigger money, I think the ethical lines need to be drawn a little bit tighter. With great power comes great responsibility, the Spider-Man rule. So if on a small level, the person does like a preview and they're paid like a little bit amount of money, so not much, because they can't charge that much, they don't have much influence. And then 8 months later, 12 months later, they do a review of the same game. They press paid promotion on the preview, and then they let the audience know about the review copy and the previous relationship. As long as it's all disclosed and all in front, I think people have gotten used to that. It's not perfect, but we've gotten used to that, especially on a small level, because we understand the value of like a cottage industry. On the bigger level, we get upset when people bring cottage industry practices to something of size. So why is that? Because the little bit amount of money isn't going to be like a difference maker. It's going to be nice. On a bigger level, we're talking about 500,000, 1,500, 2,000, 5,000, or whatever it is. Even if it's like one video or like a suite of videos that are previewing or featuring the game, etc. There aren't that many companies that can offer that. And so it becomes really important for that creator to nurture that relationship ongoing. So it's not just about that one pay to play. It's about, well, can I trust that person if they say they want to review any of those games? Because they have a real high stakes incentive to maintain that relationship for their own, channel survival or keeping that level of money coming in. It's, all that stuff. So I would like for bigger creators to think about, I don't know how to do this, as a policy, but just for people to think about the idea that the bigger you are, the more imperative it is to pick a lane. So you are a creator, you do reviews and previews and all that kind of stuff. At a certain size, now I am doing previews or features of whatever. Or you go the review route, and that's where the independence has to come in. And if it's one person doing the content or like a small group of people that are always together and everything, then I think that entity should pick just to kind of remove some things that could nail some tripwires. Or what will happen is the channel will grow to a point where they can hire more people. And they become an outfit at that point. Like a Watch It Played. That Watch It Played was Rodney, and then Rodney grew to a point where they were able to expand. And Rodney has chosen. He's chosen the feature route, in his case, tutorials. On the outfit, now people do all sorts of stuff, including top lists or different discussion pieces, features, all that kind of stuff. You keep that separate. You introduce those points of barrier and friction, kind of like a regular news outlet where you have your hard news desk and you have your opinion pieces and you have your review section or whatever it is. And you try to keep those as siloed as possible. Is that perfect? No. In no area is it perfect, because the opinion desk might influence what the news desk is doing, etc. But at least there is a little bit of friction in the system, and it's in those points of friction that gives people a chance to step back and think and assess for themselves, which at the end of the day is the thing that we want more than anything. Giving people some breathing room, a chance to assess and for themselves with as much information as possible and time to assess it. One last thing I'll get through this really quickly. I haven't mentioned it the whole time throughout the series, except for the beginning. Let's bring it back one more time. I got one more thing to say. The Quackalope thing. So this whole thing started when controversy with Quackalope had reached out to a publisher into the unknown saying, hey, I will do some preview content for you, like they've done with a lot of different companies. Here's our charge, $700. We'll get you a suite of videos. Oh, by the way, we had filmed videos already. We struggle with the game. And if we work together and there's payment exchanged, we'll bury that old content and put out the updated stuff. And where ITO went was, hold on a second. If we don't pay you, you're going to post these videos that you struggled with. What's in there? And knowing the Quackalope channel, what's in there is the kind of hit piece. A very evocative statement that gets people in the face and gets people to click and view and all that kind of stuff. Gets people excited. The clickbait. And it turns out that was true. The Aeon Trespass is unplayable. And that's where the lines are really important. Because at the end of the day, what that was like, okay, this person said, I'm going to post a review, but then if there is pay, I'll turn it into a preview. At a certain size, gotta pick. And gotta take those clickbaity review style, I'm telling the truth right now, I'm a truth teller headlines out of the chamber. Yes, that will injure your view count, but it's too important to have that distinction clear, especially when we get to the higher view counts. More people are watching, there's more at stake. When a bigger publisher, a bigger creator kind of messes up a little bit, it resounds throughout the entire hobby. So you grow to that certain size. I'll actually address this to Quack especially. I know that they might not be watching this, probably not. I did reach out to them and let them know that I'm making a series of videos and, busy and all that kind of thing. I will address it directly. Please, if you're going to take pay, that's fine. Let's do it without that hit piece stuff. Let's do it without putting it in the minds of publishers that this could be coming if I don't pay. At the very least, start there, and then we can have the conversation moving forward. So I managed to go this whole series without talking about crowdfunding, Kickstarter in particular. So much of what has happened on crowdfunding over the last 10 years, I truly believe has been to the detriment of creators. Because the model is so hype focused and the stakes are so high, especially if you're a publisher, first time publisher, or making one of them giant games, one of the moonshot type games. I think there's incentive for publishers to kind of take a little bit more of a anything's necessary approach, pull out some stops that maybe a retailer or a more established body wouldn't do. So that's a whole separate series of videos. Maybe I'll have somebody on who understands the dynamic and how the crowdfunding model, Kickstarter in particular, has kind of injected hyper-capitalism. This is capitalism versus joy. Kickstarter, I feel like, is kind of a hyper-capitalist model for good or ill, a lot of it ill, whatever. There is one point where I struggle as a creator in my relationship with Kickstarter projects and people who start them. So for years, I did a preview series on my podcast, Every Night is Game Night, where I'd invite publishers on to talk about their games, get people excited. They would never be reviewed. It was called the preview series. And I was excited about it because, a lot of these people were first timers or young in the industry, again, enthusiasts trying to help people get a leg up. So that was fun. And as I transitioned to the video, again, features, no reviews, never across that stream. What often happened was the publisher would want a testimonial. I'm showing some examples of testimonials from ARCs, a Kickstarter project from Leader Games, and they're short blurbs by reviewers who are doing previews. So talk cross the streams right there. We have people that I love and respect, like The Hungry Gamer, Dan Thoreau, Brain in a Jar, Thinker Themer. I love Thinker Themer. The section is called Impressions, but it goes back to that fuzziness of definition that I mentioned earlier. Impression, review, preview, these things are a big muck. And there's going to be enough people that'll be like, okay, those are reviews. And these reviews sound pretty positive. A wall of positivity for a game that has not been released yet. That's a really difficult thing. Made difficult by the fact that the publisher has every incentive to pick the nicest sounding quotes and put them all together and give the impression of this groundswell of positivity. Meanwhile, if you actually click the content, every single one of these pieces of content, they do the matchmaker thing. So here's a Thinker Themer example, and I know how they approach it. I know they do this all the time. Look, it's very clear. Who is this for? They're doing the matchmaker thing. They're telling you it's for these folks and not for these folks. If you don't like trick taking, don't play this game. If you like this, that, and third thing, play this game. And so cut away from context. Our quotes in the hands of publishers who have every incentive to pick the best ones make us look like a bunch of shills. And that kind of leads to the discussions. Well, this game is all the hype and it's probably not that good. Or, no one's played it except for these people who have every incentive to say how good the game is, et cetera, et cetera. And so I point this out here. Like I said, capitalism versus joy. I know we're doing it out of a sense of joy. I know why all of us participate, and I say us, in previews. Because we want publishers to have that success on crowdfunding, be able to bring in that upfront money and continue growing the hobby. But because of the hyper-capitalist context of Kickstarter, because it is bent towards hype and FOMO and the stretch goals and all that kind of stuff, I think that as creators, it would help us to be a lot more careful about the pull quotes. And I say that as a me. I used to use those quotes. And thinking about it more, I've really drawn back. So I had the opportunity to contribute a quote for Thunderworks Games' latest project, Stone Spine Architects. And I wrestled with it. And you know what? I ended up giving a quote that was more descriptive than labeling a judgment. Quote, Stone Spine Architects is elements of Sprawlopolis with building a network of cards, Sushi Go with drafting, and roleplay with its patented cornucopia of points. So how did I do? Try not to go the hype route and more like the description and the comparisons, help people understand what they're getting into, draft the game, etc. Maybe that helps somebody make a decision. Or maybe make the decision not to, but I don't want to play a game that's drafting like Sushi Go, whatever. So again, trying the best that I can to do the matchmaker thing. But adjusting it to that particular platform. So I would love to hear whoever is out there and has thoughts about either the crowdfunding thing in general or the testimonial quote in particular or different parts of different aspect of the content creation side. I would love to hear from you. Hey everybody, Future Jason here, leaping at the very end to address a comment that I feel belongs at the end of this video. Thank you very much, Jesse, who commented on a previous video and gave some very thoughtful insights and kept me on my toes. I appreciate that. saying that I didn't give enough shine to the critical reviewer. True. This video had a point. I wanted to defend the enthusiast reviewer, make that distinction. But I didn't want to do so in a way that kind of like weighted one or the other. They're both important. We need both. The enthusiast needs to be around to grow the hobby, like in a garden, and the critic needs to be there to weed out, difficult things. Why don't we have more of them? So one reason is not that the publishers are resisting it. I think there's a lot of publishers that would welcome it, obviously. And yeah, it sounds like we wouldn't want too many critics running around that hurt publisher sales. No, in the sense that like having journalistic critical attention would raise the floor of this hobby, make us look more professional, more people would see us if we had that. And I think the publishers want that overall. But there are a couple of points of resistance. Number one is because we have kind of a Wild West version of media, there is the tendency to have someone who wants to proclaim themselves independent and all this stuff, but they're not doing it in a skeptical way. They're bringing cynicism. And I talked about that in the second video. Folks who, I'm the honest person and I'm surrounded by hype, people. Yeah, that one, we resist that. Right? We don't resist skepticism. We resist cynicism. That's number one. Number two, you're also going to get resistance to the idea that we need more journalistic reviewers. So enthusiasts, you do it. You'll get that comment where it's like, okay, anyone who calls themselves a reviewer needs to adhere to journalistic standards to make everything better. And I hope I've articulated over the course of this series why that's difficult. There's different kinds of reviews because review itself is way more broad than some people think. Some people want to kind of contain the word review in this one thing, the journalist, the critic. And I mean, the person who gives you their thoughts and feelings about a game, even if they're super positive, that's a reviewer too. To some, the word is too slippery to kind of jail it in one area. So asking an enthusiast to do the journalist job as a way of filling in that gap, that's not going to be too great. So who will fill the job? And that's where the biggest difficulty comes in. There's no money in it. Or barely any money. The bigger outfits, Kotaku, Polygon, ICV2, but they do the business stuff. They don't dedicate the money to reviewers. They have like one or two people and they kind of review sporadically. They're not going to dedicate themselves to just, hard-boiled journalistic reviews, game coverage, etc. They would have to be kind of a journalist version of the Dice Tower. They review tons of games. They have tons of staff, but they'll tell you they're not out to do journalism with their games. They're basically enthusiasts too. They just do it in their own way. So in order to have more of that journalistic approach, we need the money. Either an independent funding source, a big outfit like the Times just decides to open one up, or we need a subscription model where people contribute 10, 15, 20 bucks a month in order to fund that work. And I don't see that coming anytime soon, which is unfortunately a detriment. I do think it makes our hobby look a little bit more Wild West than it can. So getting back to the main point, yay, journalistic reviewers. I'm not one of them. I don't want to be one of them, but I encourage it. And if anyone has any concrete ideas on how we can encourage more of that spirit to help our hobby grow and professionalize and be a little bit more mature in the way we handle things, both games and controversies and everything else, I'm absolutely willing to have a conversation to see how we can get more of that part of the hobby too. So y'all have figured out at this point, I sit down with a bullet point list of what I want to say, and I'm like, okay, 5 minutes, 7 minutes, and then 30 minutes later, I thought this was going to be one of the shortest ones. Turns out I was like almost the longest. Oops, sorry about that. I have a lot of thoughts, and I'm going to keep it because I am confident at the lines of discussion that I've put out, and I invite everybody to participate. So let's get to it. In the comments, share the video out. I worked really hard on this series, encapsulating 7 years of reflection on content creation. And I think I have something to offer. So if y'all feel that it's worthy, please share it out with your friends. Share with other creators. Maybe somebody you have a parasocial relationship with. You don't really have that direct contact, but it's like, okay, this person could benefit from some of the ideas here. Go ahead. Boom. I would utterly appreciate if folks did that and I got a little bit of a wider net for what I'm doing here. This is Jason reminding you, if you could change your mind, it could change the world, people. So until next time, Bye, everybody.